Good evening and welcome to the second episode of Ad Club's Vice and Versa. Vice and Versa is a property we are developing, keeping in mind the audience demand for civil debates. Debates unfortunately have become uncivil. They're more like slugfests and fist fights rather than debates. We are not blaming any particular media for that, but we are just saying that there is a need for civil debates. In Vice and Versa, what we are addressing are essentially the elephants in the room. We know that there are some topics which will never have a right or wrong answer. And what we definitely want is to give an opportunity to the fraternity to listen to different points of views. I think many points of views are always welcome, and we as a society must not forget that. This year, with chances of physical events coming down, what we are concentrating on primarily are on developing great quality content and developing skill. Now, last time I spoke to you about our intention of launching some courses that we are working with some famous universities. The work is on full swing on that, and very soon you'll be hearing about that. But today is about the debate. We know that our first episode was very well appreciated by all of you, and thank you very much for joining and participating wholeheartedly there. Today is about the second debate, so I will not, take any limelight away from it. I will introduce the moderator, who will introduce the topic and the speakers. But my biggest problem is that this moderator doesn't need any introduction. So, she's none other than television's very popular face, Sonali Krishna of the Times Group. Sonali, thank you for taking your time out and doing this. And over to you.
Thank you, Partha, and hopefully I'll do a good job moderating this discussion. Thank you for the opportunity. And now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ad Club's immersive digital debate series, Vice and Versa. This is a tripart novel series of exciting debates on subjects where the answers are still not very evident. Today, we will witness the second debate, and the topic of the debate, I promise you, is of universal interest. The motion on the floor reads, "The epitaph of classical advertising is already written." It is unfortunate that the day has come when one needs to debate this, but the fact that we're open to debate it and can candidly speak about this possibility is a signal that the advertising and marketing industry has come of age. No other industry has the confidence to debate openly its very own existence and its intrinsic value. The very fact that this industry can and does it with such panache is testament to the advertising industry's maturity and, more importantly, self-confidence. The motion on the floor is a tough one. The good news is that I'm joined by two speakers who are excellent debaters and are not new to the classical style of debating. So without further ado, let me introduce to you the two gentlemen who will be arguing for and against the motion. Arguing for the motion is Roshan Abbas, one of India's finest orators and storytellers, apart from being an actor, a TV and radio host, a producer, an event manager, a creative director, a lyricist, an angel investor, and the list is just endless. And if I continue telling you all that this multifaceted personality is, I might run out of time. Roshan is the managing director of Geometry and Compass, an experiential marketing agency, and is also the birth mother of Commune, a performing arts collective for storytellers. Now, speaking against the motion is Swapan Seth, a successful entrepreneur, a best-selling author, and founder of This Content, a content and conversation management company aimed at helping marketers to better manage their conversations. From winning his first Cannes line at the not-so-ripe age of 22 and a Clio at 23, Swapan Seth is also a voracious reader, a film enthusiast, and a music buff. He's a member of the Outstanding Speakers Bureau, which is great news for all of us as we now know that the quality of this debate will be of gold standard. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking time out and agreeing to do this. I'm super excited about this debate, and I hope both of you are ready to take this debate head on with each other.
Thank you, Sonali.
Thank you.
May the best arguments stand out. And before we, dive right in, let me quickly acquaint both of you with the rules. Each of you get 9 minutes for your opening argument. I will cue you on the 8th minute, as well as when you have 30 seconds left. It will be a hard stop when we hit the 9th minute. I will get to the next set of rules when we get there. For now, I formally open the motion on the floor, which reads, "The epitaph of classical advertising is already written." Arguing for the motion is Roshan Abbas, and your time starts now.
Thank you so much, Sonali, and it's wonderful to be here with all of you. It is an honor to be with Swapan, who I have always said that I love and I admire. But today it's a debate, and we are on opposite sides, which is a difficult thing to actually fathom, but so be it. As we begin, I'd like us to dispense with the dictionary definition of the word epitaph, because both of us being classical debaters, I do know, as does everyone else in the audience, that an epitaph is written upon a tombstone of a dead person. And if classical advertising is an evolving entity, and if that was what you were to say, then it cannot die. But I don't think we are here to waste anyone's time discussing semantics. It used to happen during our school and college debates. We don't want to lose a meaningful discussion in the quest to make that point. Also, what is classical advertising? I'm on Instagram and I asked a bunch of people. Some youngsters replied, some stalwarts replied, and they said, well, classical advertising, billboards, radio, television, newspapers, magazines. It is this that I see as a dying entity whose death knell has actually been ringing for a while. Now, death. It is impossible to define death in terms of absolutes because, there is no numerical threshold. So most of us would agree that audio tapes are a dead format in the modern era. However, there are a few of us who still possess them. I've got a cupboard which has got a couple of audio cassettes, and I don't listen to them today, but maybe some people do. So you cannot say that there is a definitive point when the audio cassette died. But today, if you compare that with the use of music streaming services, then it's almost a given by comparison. And therefore, to say that classical advertising may have already died or that its epitaph is written could be done on spending statistics since there is no concrete marker for its death. I would therefore generally describe this death as occurring when less than half of all the companies pursue traditional advertising and more than half of all companies pursue a digital marketing strategy and spend a lot more on it. Now, to my mind, a new broadcast medium has actually emerged every time a seminal change has taken place in our lives. Every time this happens, there is an impact on reach, content, context. And in each of these mediums, the minute you would find an audience, advertisers came to pay for an interruption. They paid for our consideration. On one side, there was demand creation. On the other side, there is demand capturing. Now, demand creation was advertising's first task, and armed with an insight and its creative rendition with master craftsmen for each medium, this would be achieved. The second role was demand capturing. This led to us even wanting to be seen at the places where people would buy, and therefore POP design, store placements, planograms, POS, all of this emerged from the same. This was the classical world. It was linear. Individual decisions were made by people and almost driving an unsuspecting consumer down a rabbit hole of persuasion from mind to market. Now, if the product did not live out its promise, you always had a PO box that you could write to, and this was something that you would remember in the classical age. Then came digital. Now, the classical form was applied to this as well. Don't forget that initially we had banner ads and pop-ups and email replaced direct mail. We stayed true to our form. It was just one more screen to sell on. It dealt in code, it dealt in pixels. But the coming of the smartphone finally changed this because it created a unique thing, which was interactivity and the ability to create, not just consume. Web 2.0 changed everything. Now, There is that age-old saying, nobody reads ads, people read what interests them, and sometimes that is an ad. That still holds very true. The difference is that unlike the Mad Men era of advertising, where print and the advent of TV and radio was where things were, we now live in a world of infinite choices with infinite platforms, and each platform offers a different consumer and a different behavior. So, how can one classical format appeal to all of these? From consideration to purchase, this classical advertising used to lead the consumer, as I said, much like a persuasive Pied Piper, and this requires time. That is a luxury today we do not have. You know, if any of you are online at the moment, type a brand and you will immediately see that within a nanosecond, there will be 5 alternate suggestions that will populate your screen, and you will start making your choice not on the emotional rationale that the ad gave you, but on the fact of saying, this is what is available, and immediately the rational mind starts working. Even the direction of information, this linearity which advertising thrived on, is over. The hyperlink has changed everything. It has destroyed all linearity. You do not know which direction you will go. You do not know where you will go next. Add to this the power of the democratization of content. Today, everyone is a broadcaster. Swapan is, Sonali is, Partha is, I am. And so those subliminal attention magnets that used to exist in classical advertising don't exist anymore. They are not there at play. The power of digital is that now it gives the voice to the user. It pushes engagement rather than persuasion, pushes experience rather than just insecurities. Look at influencer marketing. Though it's still evolving, influencers evolve. No advertiser or agency can catch up to these endless emerging trends. Each one has its own circle of influence, and they create their own unique form of communication. During the pandemic, the new influencers are home chefs, e-learning. Suddenly, herbal remedies is what we talk about. 6 months ago, we were talking about possibly finding a home on Mars, the climate revolution, singularity, and Elon Musk. There are some other facts that have changed this world immensely. First is the demand for authenticity. Who wants a perfectly crafted story if it is inauthentic? Who wants to debate the font size and Pantone as the heart of the matter in Black Lives Matter? Today, the world is really willing to accept the flawsome as long as it is authentic. And this really defies the role for classical communication or advertising. The second is the demand for agility. Again, as I said before, while classical advertising may still attempt to create preferences, agility wipes this away. How many times have you changed the product in that cart if it is not available when you want? Utility takes over decision making again and again. I could tell you the story of the Boat headphones, which possibly many of you may not have heard of, but it is one of the best-selling brands of headphones which does no advertising except spending it on influencers and placement. The results are absolutely staggering, and I could tell you more about that later. The next is the demand for creator-first platforms. You can forget TikTok. There are at least 20 more apps with 200 million consumers each. When mediums in the form of expression are not known and are constantly in evolution, how can this classical approach be applied to them when you don't even know they exist? Tumblr, Ruposo, Chingari, which got 10 million downloads in the last week or so. VMade, Smule, I could go on and on. The demand for a creator-first economy. Brands are happy for their products
1 minute to go.
played around with to be redesigned, all of this to happen, and the power has shifted to the content creator. The big problem is the lack of evolution. From the 1960s, the route has been the same. Where traditional has failed is to understand that a piece of insight needs to live 9 lives and only one of them happens to be the traditional story. Now, I could give you lots of examples, but if this hasn't convinced you, my last point is look at the model of delivery. The model for service is built on a legacy paid model, but today we are building via subscription walls to not let advertising in, be it Netflix, be it Spotify, any of these. Today, the epitaph of classical advertising has really been written. The linear nature of the medium doesn't exist. The linear nature of time doesn't exist. The delivery model doesn't exist. And to those who say that storytelling remains the same, a classic is a classic, look deep within. We are just fulfilling our Mad Men fantasies. The need to hang on is part of this self-indulgent culture where one is too far involved in doing what one likes doing rather than doing what needs to be done. I have a few first edition books that I love. I often go to
With
museums to
that,
see classics, but that is where they should exist. They are too fragile to face the ever evolving world. Thank you.
super. On time and crisp. Thank you, Roshan. Just to do a quick summary before I allow Swapan to do his opening argument against the motion, according to Roshan, consideration to purchase that entire route has transformed. And since we don't have a linear world, we don't live in a linear world anymore, obviously advertising cannot be linear as well and needs to change. According to him, this is a world where we now have a moral compass. Whether that's true or not, I'll allow this debate to decide. And the fact that authenticity is most important and is paramount in today's world. Storytelling in the classical style is dead, according to him, and we are not letting go. Having said that, over to you, Swapan. You have 9 minutes to make your argument against the motion.
So I'm going to be reading very extensively because I've made copious notes. You know, when you end up being told that you have to debate against Roshan, you tend to need to prepare a bit because things can otherwise go quite awry for you. I just want to come back to the fundamental principles of advertising or communication. And I think the entire problem with this motion is that this motion is talking about the irrelevance of the medium. I don't think this motion is talking about the irrelevance of the message or the irrelevance of the message disseminator. I don't think we're debating that at all. And I think the basic task of advertising, which was and continues to be all about inventing desire, remains the same. You know, when I was in Thompson, and I was there very briefly, they taught us something called the kaleidoscopic effects. And basically they said that the glass pieces are all the same. It's just when you shift the kaleidoscope, the pattern changes a bit. And I think that's really what's happened. The pattern has changed a bit. And amidst this entire pattern changing, there has been a large hue and cry about how irrelevant advertising has become. And I'm thoroughly confused because I fail to understand the fact that, you talked about storytelling being irrelevant or not as relevant as it probably was. I need to understand whether the Google Cholet ad, which was shown on TV as well, was it relevant? Did it create empathy? The Nescafe Stammerer ad, I could go on and on, the Bonvita mother and son ad. I think the basic elements of advertising will never change. The ability to create connections, the ability to leap from insights, the ability to appeal to the hearts of people will always, always remain consistent. Yes, Roshan is right. The means of communication, the change of the screens, all of that has changed. But that is really a process of evolution. It is not a process of death. I want to quote something that was actually written by someone called Eric Salama, who ran a company called Kantar for WPP. And WPP sold Kantar in November. And on June 28th this year, Eric wrote a letter to all of his colleagues, and I'll just read out a part from it. And it says, "The questions that clients have asked of us haven't changed, but the way that we've gone about answering them, those questions has changed." And that really is the point, because I think the questions that clients have as to how can I make my product more relevant, how can I make it more interesting, how can it reach the right audience, remains the same. And I think the answers in terms of, how we will deliver through which media, be it TikTok or be it, OTT or be it, Google or Facebook, that has changed. Interestingly, on June 25th, Amazon announced that it was going to have a live television service for its Prime viewers. So much for, Amazon believing that television didn't exist. And in my own mind, there's complete confusion about machines and AI. And there was this lovely thing that I read, and it was written by, I think, Wendy Clark. And Wendy Clark said that there are two kinds of conversations that can happen. You can either go to a party in an evening and meet a lady and say, "What do you do? And how was your day?" and how many kids you have. And Wendy called that an algorithmic conversation. And she says the other conversation is you go to a party and you say, so what do? You're a nurse? Oh, wow, even my mom is a nurse. So which hospital do you work? And that becomes an engaging conversation. Another interesting tidbit, a Japanese agency hired an artificial intelligence creative director about 12 years ago. I'm told he's still not won a line. So I think machines will never replace human beings. Empathy will always remain there. And the basic tenets and rules of advertising will remain unsullied and certainly not be dead. And now I want to share with you the complete confusion that seems to exist. And I'm going to quote two marketers for whom I'll never get to work. Okay, so, I'll never get to work for MasterCard and Unilever in my life. And so MasterCard has this absolutely swashbuckling CMO called Raja Mannar, who says that he's moved over to experiential marketing and doesn't believe that conventional advertising is of any use. He's the same guy who aired the co-workers commercial on NBC during the pandemic. So he went back to television. He talked about experiential marketing. I fancy these terms because as far as I'm concerned, the Made for Each Other contests was experiential marketing. And where is experiential marketing going to be now when we're going to be wearing masks, where we'll be maintaining distances of 6 feet from each other? I mean, how are we going to have those wine tasting? And how is Diageo going to do those single malt things? Obviously, they'll have to start making things like disinfectants and stuff like that. But there's also considerable confusion across the board. And let me share that with you. So Keith Weed left Unilever and then conducted a research. And the research, according to Keith Weed, proved that advertising was a very good thing. I mean, up until he was in Unilever, it wasn't. But after he left Unilever, it suddenly is. Brian Whipple of Accenture went and bought Droga 5. And he says he bought it because it renews the emphasis that he as a company would like to place on creativity. And therefore, he thought it was important to buy a vanilla classical advertising agency to add value to the consulting business. And then Mike Duda of an ad agency called Deutsch says consulting is not good enough anymore. So there's complete confusion. And I think we're all caught in this entire whirlpool where it's becoming more and more fashionable to say that advertising is dead or is dying. I don't think that's possible. I think half of the advertising spends are still spent on vanilla advertising. Just $350 billion are spent on digital. So if it's still relevant, it's important. When you talk about advertising being intrusion or being a disturbance to the consumer, 1 out of 5 desktops in the US have ad blockers on them. So the point of the matter is that I don't think it is the end of advertising. And and I would like to end with this fabulous quote from Rishad Tobaccowala of Publicis, who says, and Rishad said, we agencies aren't dinosaurs. We're actually cockroaches. People don't like seeing us. People don't like us. But we're the only ones who've been around the longest and through everything. Thanks.
Wow. You've managed to finish your argument much before time. Very well. But let me, in summation, bring to the fore, what Swapan has made as key points. He said the fundamental, reason for advertising, which is basically creation of desire, inventing desire, still exists, and that will never change. He said he compares our circumstances in our world to a kaleidoscope and says, yes, the pattern has changed, and that's about it. And he also questions the current state of affairs of advertising, saying that there are new terms, new terminologies that are invented and are fashionable and in trend. But I think what he's referring to is the fact that he thinks that the advertising industry as a whole right now seems to be groping in the dark, is confused. And given the fact that 50% of ad spends are still going to traditional plain vanilla advertising, is this really something that needs to be questioned at all. In summation, he is comparing the advertising world to cockroaches, given the fact that cockroaches have outlived almost every species. With that, thank you, both of you. I must at this point remind the participants who are watching this debate, as this takes new turns and interesting turns, that you are free to send in your questions, rebuke speakers, and I'm happy to take it. Please do so in the comment section. Now, we've heard both your opening arguments. Roshan, it's now over to you for your first round of rebuttal. I will give you 5 minutes for your rebuttal for everything that Swapan has said, and then we will go to Swapan for his rebuttal of Roshan's. And your time starts now.
Thank you so much. And Swapan, as always, brilliantly said, and everyone that you quoted and all that you said. I'm going to break up Swapan's argument into 3 parts. The first thing that he talked about was this beautiful, that's why I said that I love the romanticism that people have with advertising in terms of having this kaleidoscope, and when it turns around, the pattern changes. The fundamental fact is that the lens is broken. It is not about a kaleidoscope anymore, because a kaleidoscope has 3 elements. It has a tunnel, it has a lens at one end, and then it has these colorful objects which you then rearrange. But what if the lens is broken and the tunnel has completely collapsed? What if there is such a change that has taken place that people do not have either the material at one end or the right lens to see it through? Bonvita and Google, and you mentioned the Nescafe ad. Let me just say that all those ads exactly fall into the same thing that I say, which is that empathy in today's world lasts for a very short time, because earlier we would create empathy on one medium, follow it up with again a fact of persuasion on another, and then a third and a fourth. But today, anybody who wants to use a search engine that is not optimized for ads will go to DuckDuckGo, not to Google. And those who do not know it will fall trapped to the same funnel that you will find on Google every day. DuckDuckGo is supported by people, just like for a very long time, Wikipedia is supported by donations. This is an economy where we will pay to buy authenticity. We do not want interruption of any sort, and this interruption, if it is manipulated in even the classical form, is something that people are rejecting. What does Swapan have to say about an ad-blocked world of Spotify or YouTube now, which you're able to buy a premium subscription to get rid of ads? What will happen to communication in these places? And this number, as I said, much like the cassette versus the digital streaming service, is constantly increasing. We can sit with a bunch of people and say, what we created is so special. And I say that classics are best preserved in museums for us to be inspired by. But we must move on to look at new forms of communication and see what is the language, what is the medium. Two other points which he said. He talked about this beautiful example of machine AI versus engaging conversation, algorithmic versus engaging conversations. Do you know, Swapan, that on Tinder, a bot that was programmed by AI got more matches than a regular human being, because it was able to intelligently understand what everybody was asking for or wanting. The fact of asking about the nurse, what would data do? Data would first tell you that the mother was a nurse, and you would be more prepared to ask her questions about what is she doing during the pandemic. And I sometimes find that the classical makes us almost turn our back to everything else that is happening, and we keep existing in that same world to say, this is how things will be. Droga 5 being purchased. Droga 5 was the last thing from a traditional agency. Droga 5 really was something which was doing cutting edge creative work, because they introduced teams that would handle every brief by not approaching it from the classic copy visual approach, but having a technologist, having people who were social anthropologists sitting together. They would open up the brief and say, we will hire the best team for the job to come together and then craft this new age communication, because we don't know ourselves. They rejected the classic, and that is why they were able to come out with cutting edge creativity. Unfortunately, the cutting edge creativity always gets lauded in today's ad world, when you go to Cannes, look at the new categories. Are the new categories celebrating old communication? New categories every year are emerging because new means of communication are emerging. New places are emerging. Today, purpose is something that everybody keeps talking of. But I keep going back to the same fact. And I actually want to give you one example. If you just give me a second. The important thing, and I didn't have time at that point to say that this traditional fact that I was saying, that a piece of insight needing to live 9 lives. Now, let me give you an example. An automobile manufacturer selling to today's audience needs a lot more beyond that 30-second commercial. Just like I told you about Google, that I will have other choices depending on what my need is. So this 30-second commercial, okay, enticed the person. The new generation also looked at it and got very excited, but they bought into a sharing economy. This test drive that you might do might be through a digital placement in a game. Today, digital goods are selling in
30 seconds to go.
that advertisers don't even know. Imagine a car equipped with the latest inside your PUBG for you to collect an escape to measure its speed. Data coming in to tell you every time you don't find an Uber, it says, if you'd bought a car, your EMI would have been far lesser. The need for his favorite influencer making the car parts of culture, making the car a part of the culture around them. This is the world that we exist in, and this is where tradition fails, according to me. Thank you.
So
thank you for that, Roshan. However, I have one comment before I give it to Swapan. New categories may not be reflective of old school vanilla style advertising, but they are definitely intended as a renewed revenue stream for the Cannes Lions. Having said that, let me move to you, Swapan, so that you could take on Roshan head on and argue why this statement of his is not working.
No, in his opening remarks, he spoke about the irrelevance of billboards, the newspapers, and magazines, and all of that. And that's my entire point. What we're keeping on debating is the fact that the mediascape has changed, and there is no disputing that, okay? But what I am disputing is the fact that the mediascape is not the only component of advertising. And the topic says that the epitaph of advertising has been written, not will be written, not is being written. It says has been written. And that is untrue. And that is incorrect. Having said that, he spoke about agility. And I hear a lot about that, and I'm a firm believer in that. I think what really needs to happen within the advertising agency or the classical advertising agency is it needs to evolve. That evolution will require several new skills and technologies. And I'm sure advertising agencies are mindful of that. And that explains how the holding companies are kind of amassing a bouquet of capabilities and putting them forward. But there is a certain certainty in the motion, which is a bit worrying and which is a bit untrue. And that is my only contention. Yes, a message does have different lives, but crafting that message, creating that message, the content of that message is still critical. And I don't think machines will replace that. We are talking about a world which is, increasingly when I heard Roshan speak about bots and Tinder and, hyperlinks and all of that, I think increasingly at the end of the day in this world, there will be certain things which will still remain. There will be the human being, there will be the emotion, there will be the singularity, there will be the important things of curiosity. Those things will remain. They might subside in terms of their value. The seesaw might just move the other side. But I don't think it is fair or conclusive to say that the epitaph has been written. That is harsh and completely untrue.
Great. Okay. Now, gentlemen, I'm going to take some questions. I'm going to pose some questions to both of you just to establish whether this motion stands or not. Roshan, you've heard Swapan. We've heard you. And the fact that you think classical advertising, you're arguing that classical advertising is dead. How do you explain that most of the world and India in particular and other developing markets such as ours still do vanilla advertising, classical advertising, and it's still working, and most of the advertising business pivots around that?
Sonali, it's a very good question that you asked. You must understand that here it is a business that is trying to survive. I often find this, I keep believing that it's a room full of people who like to listen to each other's voices. The marketeer is happy listening to the advertiser. The advertiser is happy listening to the marketeer because they believe that it's almost you scratch my back, I scratch yours, because it's a business that's dependent. Let's look at how the pandemic changed all of this. When the pandemic came, the same gentleman that is quoted by Swapan actually turns and says, Richard Tobaccowala in his article talks of the fact of saying that all of it, in an article in The Economist where he is quoted, that this entire debate, this entire discussion has become about everybody doing the same advertising. There were 8 ads that looked exactly the same. Cue the somber music, cue the image, right? That's what happened. Right. But what's happened? Today, somebody tells me a sodium hypochlorite solution is required to sanitize my home. I go to Amazon and I see who will deliver it to me first. I don't care what color it is. I don't care who's on top. I don't care what is the persuasion. I need it. It's about efficiency. It is about agility. It is about authenticity to a large degree. And I keep saying this, that we will continue these conversations. How many ads have released in print since the pandemic began?
Okay, 1 minute, Roshan, let me ask you a rejoinder to your own statement, right? When you say, yes, most ads are looking the same, let me also tell you and point out to you, and I mean, unless you think differently, feel free to tell me so. How many of the ads on YouTube or Google or Facebook are different and path-breaking? They look the same as well.
You're absolutely right, because all they've done is they've taken the 30-second commercial and added another 0 and said 300 seconds. They love it because it pays them more. They get a bigger creation fee to make it. That is not what I'm talking of. See, Sonali, the word that Swapan has conveniently dropped in his rebuttal is classical. He has now said that I'm talking about the epitaph of advertising, which is untrue. I have never said that. I'm only talking about classical advertising because I believe its form and function has been defined, and that's what defines a classic. If it is ever revolutionary, if it is coming up, what is his strategy for Vigo? What is the strategy for Quora? What are you going to do with every one of these new mediums? And what will you do in a world where I will pay to block out the entire advertising community, which is happening today on YouTube Red? It's happening on Spotify. It's happening on Netflix. We have to understand, COVID has given us a situation where we are suddenly, if it was so persuasive, if it was so wonderful, if it was achieving all its objectives, classical advertising, why is that down, and why are digital agencies still outperforming them? Why are people still being able to, why do 10 million people download an app called Chingari? Because their natural propensity to have become content creators today. Look at Chingari, 10 million people the minute TikTok went, because the desire to be a content creator still exists. And they will continue to do that. And you will have to, as a brand, go directly to that person and bypass the advertiser entirely, because they will craft your communication, because they know what is the method, the medium, the person, and their language.
Tell me something. Great points. Why is it then all the dominant social behemoths advertise on television? If they have so much belief in their own medium and their own technology and the fact that they have massive reach and everybody wants to reach out to them, why on earth are they spending advertising dollars on television?
Sonali, I know you work for a television channel and therefore you will...
No. But the fact is, what I'm saying is not untrue. So don't shoot the messenger.
No. Very often what ends up happening, I see real estate companies advertising every day in the newspaper. It is wonderful to see your building and show it to your family because you've already made your money. When you have a pepper fry which has ended up with a huge valuation and someone says you must have physical stores, you must go out and put a commercial, you do because you are fighting investor pressure. The investor is the same classist. He's the same person sitting back and saying, this works. In my world, this works. You have to work with new age people to understand when you speak. There's a woman who on a single day did transactions, if I'm not mistaken, of over $1 billion because she's an influencer sitting and chatting with people. She was a fashion influencer in China. And this person as an individual is a bigger means and a bigger broadcast medium. We have to look at these new mediums. I love old commercials. I have loved the Volkswagen Beetle ad. I love the Apple commercial. Look at what Apple is doing today. Apple's advertising is show, don't tell. They will just show you shot on Apple. Shot on Apple. What are they trying to talk to you? They're telling you the utility. They're telling you look at how great my lens is. They're telling you, you are the content creator. This is what's going to come out from your creation. I've given you a great product. We have to realize that there is an inevitability to this fact. And again, I totally say, every time Swapan writes, I'm the first person to look at it and say, this is brilliant. This needs to be preserved and kept. My worry is the person who scrolls through it. Because unfortunately, that's a person who exists and is now controlling the medium. Every time something great is written in terms of a commercial, I realize that there is still a part of India that is illiterate and cannot read, and therefore voice is going to be their first medium. Somebody will create something for them there. That is why Neeraj Ruparel is today a head of voice for an agency, saying this is a new space. You will have to find new ways. You will have to find new ways of actually going out and dealing with these.
Great. Swapan, I'm going to come to you now and ask you some pertinent questions. Do you want to respond first?
I just want to say one thing. That,
sure.
That even that communication from Apple that shot on an iPhone, that unfortunately still appears on billboards all over Gurgaon.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Swapan, how many times, Josie and everybody else once told me that they would find 5 spots outside the marketing head of a company near his house to place hoardings so that he saw it.
Okay.
Because it feeds an ego.
I don't think that's actually accurate because... No. Fair enough. I agree with that. But I don't think that most of the spends on, let's say, traditional mediums are to feed egos or appease one's wife or children and so on and so forth. Having said that, let me ask you, Swapan, some of the tough questions. Do you think agency people are living in their own zone compared to, let's say, marketers who are looking to, get with the program, look at new mediums, get slightly more, differentiated when they're communicating with the millennials or the centennials and whatever else comes next? Do you think they are living in their zone of denial because they're unable to see this world changing, and more importantly, unable to cope with this world changing, because the average age of most marketers who are actually making these decisions, or the average age of the agency person, is way above the average age of, let's say, the millennial. We don't have young people driving agencies.
Well, yes and no. So I'm not a huge...
Please don't forget that we are still in the middle of a debate. So,
No. So the point of the matter is I'm not a huge fan of advertising people per se, I must say, because, I do believe that they live in La La Land, and, all of them are still obsessed with their pencils and sharpeners and lions and elephants and, all other stuff like that. And increasingly, I've stayed away from that world because I've discovered that the real world of marketing is a world where you have to get involved with distribution, with pricing, with, suggesting other marketing techniques. And even when I started this content, I started well before the phrases content creation were fashionable and all of that. But, Sonali, everyone is like a deer in the headlights, even marketers. I think no one really has a conclusive answer in terms of what to include in their advertising budgets, what media to include, what to exclude. I think everyone is grappling with the entire thing. And I think this is finally going to pan out in a couple of years when we get greater clarity on how the millennial is going to operate and how the millennial is going to engage with media. All of what Roshan is saying is true, absolutely true and completely flawless. But for me, it still remains largely in the media bucket, okay? And that's the bucket that he knows beautifully well. That is not a bucket that I know at all, okay? What I do know is about, the fact that persuasion will still be important. You will require a certain language. You will require a certain form of communication. That communication might be 30 seconds, might be 300 seconds. That is not the point. And to say that media is the only element of advertising, and therefore classical advertising is dead, I have a point against that. That's really it.
I think that's a fair point, which, the fact that we are only attacking the medium, and the medium may have changed, but have the fundamentals changed? That's a fair point.
If I may come in just for the fact of saying that Swapan has said, and I quote Swapan, I'm one of those unique people who've been in the wrong business for most of my life. Advertising interested me, but it was not the seed of my soul. I've always been interested in consumption, in luxury. The fact is this, he is a classical, I mean, I've always said this, nobody writes better, according to me, than Swapan does.
But no one reads it.
that's no, Swapan, that's what I'm saying. That, and I am not talking about the medium, Sonali. I'm saying Swapan coming and spending time with a bunch of youngsters and saying, let me learn your language. Let me learn what is this word that I cringe about, but you use daily. And then let me show you what to do with it. Is Swapan evolving his craft? I am making a big judgment on classical. I am not saying advertising is dead. That is why I'm constantly saying the epitaph of classical advertising. If this was the epitaph of advertising, I would not be. I'd be sitting with Swapan right now and sharing a drink and saying, "Come, let's fight this together." But it's just that. I'm actually playing on that. And we are debaters. We are college debaters. That's why we are doing it also. Let me tell you that.
Absolutely.
Fair enough. When he's questioning that, let me ask you another question, Swapan. Anyway, Roshan has accused me of being on your side because I work for a television channel. So I have to recuse. I have to, defend myself and my position. And my question to you is, if the case is that the classical advertising style still exists and still has value, and still has the potential to create desire and hence translate into sales, why is it that today content creators on TikTok and many such other platforms are able to create content that goes viral and are being tapped into by agencies now? And why is it that traditional agency creative guys or copywriters of the advertising fraternity are not able to, basically write or communicate in such a manner?
Because we've become a very, very mediocre fraternity, Sonali. I mean, the kind. No. It's not funny. It's actually very, very sad. I think the craft of the conversation, the craft of thinking, the craft of communication has all dissipated dangerously, as far as advertising people are concerned. And I think we're incapable of creating good content. And therefore, that good and we need to take cognizance of that, and we need to understand why we're being outraced by people who content for other media, and because, like I said, we've lived in a very, very sheltered world. Our bonuses are linked to whether you want 20 lions or 45 elephants and all of that. Look at how you're compensated, but there is a great mediocrity which lies in our business. And I think a large part of the blame actually goes to the people who run these agencies, because I don't think they've evolved very much. They've been brilliant at what they always did, but I don't think they've explored different avenues. Of course, there are always exceptions to the case, and I think that is the real melee that lies in the industry. We are a very mediocre bunch.
That is a bold statement, and let me rephrase what you just said. I think it's the boldest statement we will have, unless you want to, punch that over, Roshan. I will give you that opportunity. But the point is, if you're saying that classical advertising is still very much required, critical, and important, in the entire scheme of creating desire, and the fact that classical advertising is not dead, talent is dead in this industry, and that's where the repair needs to take place. Roshan, are you in agreement with that? That talent is now become extremely average and mediocre, and that's why the industry suffers.
Again, my dear friend Swapan actually led me to this when he said the other day, saying that I am going to quote you, and I was like, oh my God, I better go and look. And then when I started looking, and I really feel that, and Swapan is contemplative because of the fact that he is a person who genuinely, I feel, is a classic, and I will continue to say this always. He said,
calling you dead.
No, it's not at all. That's why I'm saying
Tiger जिंदा है.
नहीं, टाइगर बिल्कुल जिंदा है. टाइगर को ने अपना एटमॉस्फेयर अलग बना लिया है.
बिल्कुल.
दुनिया से दूर इसीलिए रहता है. मैं जब स्वपन के घर गया था, it was a most engaging conversation where I wanted more and more of Swapan and all his choices in art and everything. And I just turned and said, how do I make him join this new world and take him there and say, sit, imbibe, and then teach them? Because he needs to. I'm going to quote Swapan and say, advertising is fast losing its relevance. What is worse is that it's fast losing its talent. And the worst is that it is fast losing its own respect. We need to correct all these three issues. The reason is exactly what he said. We still have people sitting in chairs and positions of power who very often are protecting designations. They are not protecting. They are not protecting the business they joined. They are not in it. And we moved on with this. Why was Glitch a company that I partnered with? And I told them, I do not know anything you do. I need to learn from you. And today it's a huge digital, and they dropped the word digital, saying, no, we are a creative agency. We figure what our audience's medium it as we find it. And that's what happens when you actually reach out. And I think people like Swapan need to actually bring that joy back for everybody to realize. Otherwise, classical advertising will die, and it will be a tragic day.
What do you mean will die? Are you then, what are you saying? That it's not yet dead?
I've constantly said, that the epitaph. No? Sonali somehow has to like,
no, but Roshan, there is a lady actually in Calcutta who I send an email to once every month. And that email is a very simple email. It says, Anahita, what do I need to know? What do I need to read? What do I need to hear? What do I need to see? And I think that is very, very important. And even when we ran an agency, I mean, I would constantly ask colleagues, what are you hearing? What are you reading? What should I hear? What should I read? I think exfoliation is very, very important in evolution. And I think not much of that is happening. And if that exfoliation ends, we will end, because yes, the world around us is changing, and we have to find our feet in that new world.
Yeah, but are you in agreement with what Roshan is saying? I mean, don't love each other so much, please.
Listen,
really.
we fought for an hour and then
please. No, are you in agreement with that? He's saying that today, they are protecting designations, and our industry is filled with people who belong to the era of classical advertising and are, not really aware of the current ecosystem they're living in. And the fact that, we're having a problem of talent, of creativity is a function of that.
Of course it is that. And I think, and in the process, okay, let's not just talk about agencies as being made up of purely creative people. There are other people in the agency. Okay, there is the account management teams. There is the account planning teams. I haven't even heard about them for the past few years, if not a decade. Okay, and I think that is important as well, because I think the entire business is becoming so very much transactional, and in the process so very devoid of rigor. And that rigor, which is very, very important in advertising in the earlier days, that is rapidly missing. But yes, I'll give you a great example. So I saw the Bonvita ad and I called up Piyush. And I said, ye ad aapne likha hai? He's saying, nahin. He's saying, it's written by a Goan. I said, yaar, ye kya aadmi hai? I said, what's his name? He said, Ryan Mendonca. I made that my ringtone. I think, what we've also forgotten in this business is to doff our hat at things that are done well, at beautiful things. I do remember that when I saw the Nestle Stammer ad, I reached out to that guy and I told him, oh my God, I'm a huge admirer of what you've done. I think all of that has changed. And to be honest, I agree with a large part of what Roshan has said. Of course, what he said is a perspective, once again, which I said is from a media lens. But yes, I mean, we are in trouble. We are in turmoil. We are at crossroads. I think we need to examine our role. We have to examine our abilities. But it's still possible. It's still possible to live.
Okay, let me ask you a simple question, bringing both of you right back and in attack mode. Classical copywriting, art direction, filmmaking, will it continue to have value or not?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. Roshan?
Again, this is the world we are entering. And Sonali, this is what I keep saying. These will be beautiful things. Today there is a movie called The Irishman, which is made and everybody turns and says, oh my God, it's going to win the Oscars and whatever. You watch it on Netflix and pause it 50 times, but that is not the format for which it was made.
But it was trashed, Roshan. That was trashed.
No, because the audience has changed. I'm telling you, there'll be a bunch of us who will sit and say, oh my God, look at that beautiful classic shot and that's what happens. That's what happens with the classic. But this generation, value conscious, rational, evaluative, and I'm quoting someone who's here, they make those choices, and I keep saying they have crafted their own form of storytelling. They don't hold the screen in the manner that we learn. Today, there are workshops to figure out how do you shoot a commercial that you could repurpose it for Instagram, for Facebook, for TikTok. How do you make it if the sound is not on? What do you do? I mean, Facebook started an entire thing called thumb stoppers to say, how do I get them that if they're scrolling, they will stop, and for 3 seconds, we can show them something. Now, imagine this. And somebody turns and said, you know what this is? This is scrolling. This is attention. And I heard that and I was blown away. And I said, yes, but that is because this is the classic format you and I learned. The other generation does not. Today, there is a person playing a video game inside which a DJ comes to perform, gets 100 million people and sells digital goods. Nowhere is there an agency involved. It is just that individual. And the child is watching that. There are tons of them buying tickets to get inside that place. And at the same time on their headphone, they're listening to something else. This is what we are entering. And we have to realize that this set of people is evolving at a speed that we may not be able to catch up from a classical viewpoint.
Well, there's a very pointed question to you, Roshan. What do you mean? What does new mean? New means essentially, do you mean attention hijackers, which only basically, deteriorate the quality of life? Men and women are being thrown into the digital clutter, things which make us grossly disconnected with the highly connected world. Are we leaving this all to machines and AI and letting our brains rot and taking decisions without thoughts? Do I really need this product or service? I think it only serves the Silicon Valley entrepreneurs and big corporates who only want us to live in a digitally trapped life.
No, and which is why for the sake of my soul, I created commune. For the sake of commerce, I created the work I do, and I do that because I do that very often in terms of achieving a purpose that has been given to me by a brand. But for authenticity, I created commune because I realized that we are living in a highly lonely world. I realized that in this manipulation, in the end, we seek human connection, but we do not seek it from advertising. We seek it in Swapan's poetry. We seek it in the stories of people out there. We seek it in the lyrics of Prasoon Joshi. We seek it in Gulzar and Javed Akhtar even today, because the truth they say is still very much there. And you will continue to do this. I had come to Bombay and I remember in that point in time, somebody had told me, koi haath bhi na uthayega, jo gale miloge tapak se, ye naye mijaz ka shehar hai, zara fasle se mila karo. Ye naye mijaz ka media hai. ये नए मिजाज का मीडिया है, इसने फासले और बढ़ा दिए हैं, लेकिन the human connections that we want, we will do, but that will not be advertising. That will not be crafted to that degree. I love this phrase called flawsome. I'm flawed, but I'm awesome. I do not have the dotted I. I do not have the cross T. I do not have the perfect color in my shade card, but I am me. I am original and I am authentic and I am willing to be accepted as I am. And that is why this is not about the new. This is about the fact you have to be a realist and look at the world we exist in, and you have to find your own little space, which is your own. And that could be in any of your arts, and which is why commune is my heart today.
Okay. Are you accepting what Roshan is saying, Swapan? Right?
Of course I am. Of course.
You are.
Of course.
So can I say that the motion on the floor wins then?
Yes, you can. This is not about winning.
This is not about winning or losing. I would say that honestly. I genuinely feel.
Yeah, his is a more compelling argument. His is a more compelling circumstance. Okay, mine is a more utopian situation and circumstance where I attempted to bolster it with the fact that it still had something, a kernel to live by or a kernel to exist. But if you inspect it from the realities of media, and they will never escape us, of course the motion has been won.
Right. I have one question which I'm going to ask, and then I am going to wrap this up. And it's a question that is from Partha.
Oh.
Yes.
Must be to Roshan. Can't be to me.
I know. I'm waiting for this.
Which I'm just trying to find. Yeah. In the new world of interactivity, the most important parameter for the consumer is price. Are we making brands and blands? It's so bland that price is the only decision point.
Partha, I do not think so. I think, you know what happens again. This is a classical lover of advertising getting riled and saying, सब कुछ बिक गया है. नहीं, बिल्कुल नहीं. ऐसा नहीं है. The new is not about the fact. We do want storytelling. We want it in a different manner. We will take the empathetic reaction to that beautiful story, but we will also look at the 5 products that Amazon suggested. We will read the 10 reviews below. And I talked about this PO box earlier, that PO box today is all about saying it's no longer a PO box, it's that return policy. So your product better be good. You know, for the longest time we created things. Did we ever ask the person saying why you created it? We were just happy selling it. But today the why has become so important. Today, one of India's biggest brands is being called out for just changing the name of a product and not exploring the why. And that's what I think, Partha, that's what needs to be done. I think it's just that very often algorithms and things try to put you into a rational frame of mind, and law does not exist on emotions. It tries to find a rational balance of saying, show me proof, tell me the truth. This is that generation because they have the ability, they have that tool. They are not just being talked to, they can talk back.
Right. Can you name me, since you're arguing for the motion, can you name one brand that has managed to become a big brand, right, with whatever new definition of advertising you are suggesting, without the support of the traditional paraphernalia? Can you name me one brand?
No, if you look at any of these creation platforms that I mentioned, and I mentioned a list of them, none of them have advertised. They just created a platform and said, come. Now when they've got those people come to pay. They've created teams to now sell ads on their platform. But they're not.
Those are media platforms.
They are creator platforms. See, again, the difference is, Sonali, very often, we live in a one way. We created television where you have to listen to the person, and do you really get to talk back? I mean, look at our news media today. Do we get to talk back? We have television where you have to watch a soap. Can you change it? No. But in all the mediums that today have come in where creators are celebrated, one day, I mean, that's what I'm saying, look at it. If you go on TikTok, there is a person who's talking education.
Fair enough, but you name me one brand. You name me one brand that has built its legs and built its popularity basis all of what you just said.
No,
name me one brand.
Yes, absolutely. So as I told you, the entire set of people that I was mentioning, whether it is Quora, whether it is Chingari, whether it is Roposo, whether it is VMate, whether it is all of these, there are so many of these new age brands. There are so many digital brands that are just, digital first brands first come and show their efficiency. They show their real utility to you. And then they say, okay, you know what? We'll create some stuff for consumer love. If Google was not a good search engine, that ad, again, I'm saying, great ad. Would you choose it? But today, if I told you there's an alternate which is better, what will you choose?
That ad was actually technically not for Google. It was for Google Maps.
Yes.
So, right. And that actually was a new addition which they wanted people to adopt. And when they did do that ad, and the fact that you, me, Swapan, and all the participants remember that ad the moment you mention it is actually a testament to the fact that it actually worked. It was for Google Maps, not for Google, and the ad, it did work post that ad. Just to say, that should have been your argument, Swapan. But anyway.
Sonali, you have clearly taken sides, as you said, and you as a moderator.
Taken sides. I have not taken sides. But you all are loving too much. You all are loving too much. This is a debate. You all can't love each other so much on a debate.
Swapan, we'll catch up for a drink and we will then discuss this.
Yeah, absolutely.
But having said that, both points have been noted. You are right. There is no winner. There is no loser. Happy to have had a free-flowing conversation on what's working, what's not working, what needs to be done. I think the winners is just the industry. The fact that the industry is able to have this conversation, and is able to take both sides, both points of views. Hats off to the ACT Club for this initiative. Thank you very much. Hope all participants enjoyed this as much as I did. Thank you again, Roshan and Swapan, for your time.
Thank you so much, Swapan. Thank you, Sonali. Thank you, Partha. Thank you for the team that was putting this together.
Yes.
Priyambada and everyone. Thank you, and the ACT Club itself, Bipin and everyone.
That's great. And